I'm just want to start off by saying I'm really honored to be here and that what I completed for my master's program is helpful in the field. Um, my project mainly revolves around obviously green stormwater infrastructure, which is why you are all here. But I really wanted to be helpful in some way. I'm someone who I'm very interested in a lot of things. And so I thought, let's do something that would be helpful in the field. So this was a project that came out of a current work done by Open Lands and Healthy Schools campaign. They are working right now on trying to figure out how to do GSI maintenance in Chicago. And I had the opportunity through my work to meet with them and say, hey, what research do you need? Like, how can I be helpful? And they said, we really want to learn what's happening around the country. So can you just talk to people? And I love talking to people. So here we are. So these are the lessons I learned from folks that are doing public sector GSI maintenance programs. And again, this is a master's in sustainable urban development from DePaul University, my final project. So I'm just going to start by setting the stage a little bit. Going over my methodology, the questions I asked, and the results summary. Okay, so there's a couple quotes I want to pull out from the conversations I had. The first is, big city, small city, water utility, everyone has issues with maintenance. And I think it goes to show how many people are on this webinar that is a true statement. Secondly, I really wanted to read this out. It's a little longer, but keeping our projects in a state of good repair allows you to do more, to build more, to pilot more things. Because if I'm just constantly getting pushback of, oh, well, we can't maintain this, or, oh, we have this example where it isn't working, it's really hard to innovate and to try to get people to take a chance on, well, let's try out this additional green space because it's really going to provide a good flood mitigation benefit. So a little bit about the methodology of this project. So I identified interviewees to ask questions about green stormwater infrastructure. They came from recommendations from the Open Lands and Healthy Schools campaign teams. I also attended the Green Infrastructure Leadership Exchange annual meeting and asked some folks who they thought would be good to talk to. And then at the end of some of the earlier interviews, I asked who else I should be talking to. So I got some recommendations from interviewees themselves. I ended up talking to 12 people, which is really exciting, from across the country. As you can see, mostly on the East Coast and the West Coast, with a couple in the Midwest. Each interviewee was kind of promised the Chatham House rules, like it won't be applied to you, so they could be honest about their experiences. So, all right. So here are the questions that I asked. First, just basically, what's the structure of your program? Second, why did you set it up? What was the impetus? What drew folks to want to create this program? What does your partner structure look like? Who are you partnered with and why? How is maintenance funded and financed? Where do you get your funding? Do you have any? What asset management or database systems do you use? How do you keep track of where your GSI is and isn't? What sort of contracting and maintenance standards do you have? How are you, what rules do you have and how are you following them? What staff capacity do you have to run your program? Are you consultant based? Do you have in-house work? How is the program working to date? How are you measuring success? What does success look like? How are you addressing equity in your program, whether that be at the siting phase or in workforce development? And what lessons have you learned along the way? So I'm going to be going pretty quickly, honestly, through a lot of these things because this is a 45-page report, which is free. Feel free to go find it. I have it linked on my LinkedIn. And so I'm going to kind of do high-level results summary. But if you want to dig into any of this, feel free to go and print it off or read it yourself at those sites. So in general, my research really came down to two cycles in talking to people, a negative cycle and a positive cycle. And I know that this is simplified. Not everyone falls within these perfectly, but this is a good framework to start understanding where you can leverage change to maybe get into a positive cycle if you find yourself in a negative one. So I found that every interviewee falls somewhere on each of these. If they're in a negative cycle, maybe they're at the point where there isn't political will. So because there's no political will, there really isn't good investment in your maintenance program. Therefore, you can't build up capacity. If you can't build up capacity, your systems aren't going to be sufficient to meet the need, which means that maintenance is going to have to be reactive or non-existent. That means your GSI could potentially fall into disrepair, failure to meet the standards. You need more money then to fix things than it would have cost to prevent the disrepair in the first place. You might have to retire installations, and you could have a negative public perception. And that, again, would then lead into lack of political will. If the public isn't for something, it's really hard to have political will for it. So you could find yourself in one of these phases. Or you could be in the positive phase. So these, as you can tell, are kind of the opposite. You have champions that mobilize political will, so you have the investments that you need for sufficient staff and resources. Then you can branch out. You can create partnerships. Partnerships create efficiencies. So maintenance can be proactive. You save money. Everything's functional and beautiful. Therefore, the public is really invested and excited, and you could even get community members invested in it. So as you can see, based on where you fall within these cycles, there's a way to try to turn the tide. So this might be a good place to start if you're just starting to think about where you fall within these. The key takeaways I'll go over next are kind of varied by program, but I think that there's some really good key things to chew on and to think about as you're looking holistically at your program. So first, this is a theme that came off across the interviews, is establishing cross-agency communication and collaboration. As you saw in the cycle, it's really about creating efficiencies and getting everybody on board together. So one quote from practitioner was that each entity is going to have an end goal. You know, everyone's interests need to be known so you can create that umbrella. So everybody aligns under that umbrella and wants to work together. So identifying what that umbrella is will be important. Partners could include forestry, parks, schools, sustainability departments, streets, transit. The list goes on and on. There are many, many partnerships because, as we know, water and specifically stormwater touch a lot of different systems. However, we need to be careful not to make sure that there aren't roles that overlap too much. Because if that happens, then things get confused. It's really hard to communicate. So we'll get into this a little later, but for example, one asset management and tracking system versus 5, making sure that when you have maybe a partnership with parks, that GSI and parks are being maintained properly and you don't accidentally mow over something that isn't supposed to be mowed, for example. So a lesson from a practitioner, and these are kind of spread out throughout my report, is that it's really helpful to name the roles of individuals within each organization. So it's sort of that lead, that point of contact. So I know if we have a partnership with parks and I have an issue with parks, I know exactly who to talk to. I don't need to jump through any hoops to have a question answered. And then lastly, community partnerships. There are several challenges that came up with involving community in maintenance. However, it was really recommended to be proactive with groups that are interested and bringing them in instead of kind of shutting those doors. So this could mean making them aware of the maintenance schedules, providing education. You could even engage them off cycle. So they're not directly part of the ongoing maintenance every month, but they support in between to make sure that it doesn't get too extreme when you come out to do maintenance. So really looking for that proactive community engagement if you do have a group that's interested. Next is designing with maintenance in mind. So this was the one that I think the interviewees got most excited about, because you want maintenance folks at that table when decisions are being made about design of these systems. It's really important to understand, from a maintenance perspective, how you're going to maintain this over the long haul. So as this person said, that they weren't respected or involved. And at the end, they get stuck holding the bag of like, well, what are we supposed to do with this? You put it in the middle of a 5-lane road that's really, really busy and hard. And, how do we keep people safe when maintaining this, for example? So another recommendation was to make sure people in the room are crew leaders or superintendents that come from a maintenance background, because the conversation can get caught up in things like design or contracting, but maintenance needs to be just as vital. And there's a few different ways that maintenance, keeping maintenance in mind looks like. There's a few different um, things to keep in mind. The first is life cycle. So when we think about GSI, it's not something we just put in the ground and it stays there. Anyone who knows GSI and works with GSI knows that it's a cycle, that if you plant a tree and the tree grows, then there's going to be shade, and then you might need a different type of plant there over the life cycle. So guidelines that take into account the changes that will be undergone throughout that life cycle. Second is designing for neglect. So if we already know that there may be neglect, why not account for that in the original design? Passive systems, smart systems. So thinking about life cycle and designing for neglect. It's also important, if you're looking at efficiencies and partnerships, to standardize the design. And so having a standard design that's used consistently makes it easier for, options down the road in terms of sharing contractors or centralizing systems. So a lesson from the practitioner that I was like, oh, yeah, is this not a thing? People, apparently there are barriers. So make sure that manuals reflect the languages spoken by your staff. Make sure that your manuals are reflective of people that are going to be using them. So little things that you could do right away potentially. Setting up unified asset management systems. As I mentioned earlier, you want to make sure that you're kind of making sure everyone has access to the same systems and the data that's coming in is the same data coming out. So some considerations if you're looking at a new system or looking to change systems, this is what the interviewees cited as the most important to think about. First, what system is your organization already using for gray stormwater infrastructure? Could it be adapted for green? What software your partners are using to track systems? Maybe the parks department is using a system that would really work for you, and you're hoping to partner with them anyway, right? The look of the user interface was something that came up, and it was interesting. Isn't intuitive. Are you going to have to train and retrain people like your contractors to use it? And also, what data do you use in decision making? Are you getting that data in the first place? So some data being collected is what you see on screen right now. And while it's not a comprehensive list, there are a few ones that were highlighted as something that they definitely collect. So they're broken down into project details, the individual installation, when it was built, equipment, material, labor, location, what types of GI. And then you've got a separate list for inspections. Really, what do you need to be looking for? Including last inspection date, percentage of trash, etc. So one lesson from the practitioner, which I really appreciated, was after a year with a new system, pausing to actually host a workshop with your contractors on the data management system itself to get feedback on making changes. Because if you could have what you think is the best system in the world, but if your contractors are confused, don't know how to use it, or have feedback, that's really, really important. Dedicated funding, everyone's favorite topic. So a lot of people talked about sewer versus stormwater fees. So one interview noted that the funding for the GSI grants programs comes from their sewer fee, actually, as opposed to a stormwater fee, because the grant focuses on removing volume from combined sewer systems. It's kind of a little bit of a creative way to look at it. I will pause and say that there is such a variety of different ways that funding works across all of these different programs. And so this is just kind of a little bit of a smattering of those. It was noted that there are policies that will drive up costs. And you probably have run into a few. One interview noted that their city has a policy, if you cut up a street for a project, you have to repave not just the area, but the entire street. And that just makes the cost of these shoot sky high. So maybe looking at those and see if those can be adjusted in any way. Pay-in structure was an interesting idea, where one funding option was where all agencies that manage the GSI would pay into an account that get used to hire contractors for maintenance. So that contractor would then maintain all of the assets. So this would also depend on who your partners are and what types of GSI they have, and going back to what we just talked about, do you have standardized, are they standard? Would make it a lot easier if you were to have a pay-in structure. I also noted that a lot of funding is broken up depending on the thing that's being funded. So the education part of your GSI program could be special purpose revenue sources, the O&M manual development. In some places, there's a grant from a university. Workforce development could be a Department of Labor grant or Department of Conservation. So it's very much just building puzzle pieces and trying to get everything to fit together. It was very rare for a program just to be funded from like one dedicated source, I found. Also of note, there's usually a surge in motivation after a storm for funding projects. However, it's usually funding new project, not the maintenance of current or already installed projects. Prioritizing proactive systems. So I found that there were kind of three different types of maintenance that people were talking about. And this is the pie chart to represent what they believe, or the majority believes it should look like. Majority should be preventative, getting out there every month. Of course, you will have some reactive maintenance based on calls from your community members, and that's important to definitely jump on and build that relationship. And then you've got repair restorative of like, okay, we just got to fix this, or this didn't turn out the way that we wanted to. And it was noted that emphasizing preventative maintenance is the best thing anybody can do. It's by far the cheapest way long-term to maintain things, and ensures investments in these systems is worth the time and effort as well, and that they do what they're supposed to be doing. So for an example of preventative maintenance is crews going out to the same area every time, every month. This was noted for folks that have in-house crews that do this. And it's also a great opportunity then to involve community to help in those interim moments, as I mentioned previously. Restorative maintenance is extremely expensive and can be cumbersome and intrusive to the immediate area that the work is done. I'll also say it's more expensive because it is these one-off things versus preventative. If you have to pay a contractor to go out to this one specific area to do this one specific thing, it's like that's going to cost way more than hiring someone to do something very routine, and it will prevent a lot of that. Building strong internal teams. So as I just mentioned, there are pros to having your own internal staff. We'll go over that in a minute. I found that there was kind of three buckets of, I guess, opportunities. The first is internal staff. The second is external workforce programs. So that would include Service Corps programs, city workforce development programs, and local nonprofits. And then the third is contractors that can be local or not local. And you could have just one of these, you could have all three, you could have two. I found that utility orgs usually partner with an external workforce program, or can partner with an external workforce program. And that could perhaps add training on top of their general training that participants receive, which can maybe decrease a little bit of the training burden. Next, you might have all three. So this I found occurs when internal staff bring on outside programs to support contractors. Sometimes it's required by the contract that they work with a specific workforce program, and sometimes it's not required. And lastly, there were limitations that were brought up over the skill of local contractors. Some interviewees needed to look outside their communities for talent, which is a whole separate thing that is very much related, but outside of the scope of this 10-week graduate report. All right, building strong internal teams continued. So as promised, here are some of the reasons highlighted for preference for in-house staff over contractors. I will say there was one program that is trying to privatize, but the majority don't have and would like really strong in-house staff for these reasons. One, increased cost efficiency compared to hiring contractors, a greater sense of ownership by the maintenance crews, easier to coordinate with other departments, easier to ensure proper certification, greater control over the knowledge level of your staff, less turnover, you can support community members, and then there's increased flexibility on need and frequency. So one quote is that we know there will be a greater sense of ownership as compared to working with a contractor because we will have the same employees familiar with the sites. Sometimes contractors can send out different people at different times who aren't familiar. You have to kind of retrain them, reteach them. If it's the same folks on the same route every time, they know it. And also they know they could potentially know the community members too. Okay, so some conclusions. For GSI to be successful, maintenance must be prioritized. I think everybody on this call knows this. It is also fundamentally different than gray and should be treated as such. I found that practitioners are expertly juggling priorities, requirements, consultants, systems, and partnerships while considering their entire pipeline of projects from potential all the way to, maintenance. Even though they're typically under-resourced and stretched thin, they show up to work every day with passion, dedication, and hope. I really had really great conversations with these professionals who are very passionate about what they do and know that GSI can really make a difference. So some gratitude. Those listed are interviewees that were given permission by their city to have their name listed. Those not listed, their organization opted not to be named. I had a couple of reviewers and my advisors, Claire Marcy, Danielle Goulet, Daniela Pereira, Emily Zhang, and Hugh Bartling. I'm excited to pass it off to Pam Boyle Rodriguez to talk a little bit more about the City of Palo Alto's program.
Thanks, Nicole. So this is intended to be pretty short, just a small point of view perspective from a rather small agency that is trying to make maintenance work and relatively succeeding. We're getting there. The stormwater compliance manager at the City of Palo Alto, and wanted to talk a little bit about what we've been trying to do to break that negative cycle that we're in. So quick background is the main driver for the work we do is a very elaborate, stringent stormwater permit. We're an MS4. Almost all cities and agencies that surround the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, have separate systems and fall all under this same permit that focuses on protecting the water quality of the San Francisco Bay. And so we have to meet a lot of different requirements regarding a lot of different pollutants like trash, PCBs, and mercury. We have to make sure that existing facilities and businesses are have appropriate BMPs on place, construction sites have appropriate BMPs in place. And we also have stormwater treatment requirements and a lot of different requirements, very unique ones like we're required to address water quality from unhoused populations. We have to have a cost reporting, fiscal analysis every year, et cetera. So one of those things is stormwater treatment, which we have a lot of passion about in our team. But unfortunately, we're a small team trying to do a lot. And so we've been trying to build this up slowly. And so our big driver, at least with upper management and what we communicate, is what's in the permit. However, we're aware that we need a program for GSI design, construction, and maintenance, not these kind of like all these little things that are in the permit, but we're not required to have a program. So we're trying to find a way, how can we develop a program, but really try to get support via the drivers. So we're required to have stormwater treatment for projects that are larger than 5,000 square feet impervious surface. for road reconstruction, pavement projects, pavement widening projects that are at least an acre or larger. And then also each permittee, Palo Alto is one of those. We also have to treat 3 acres per 5,000 of our population, 50,000 of our population. So that may sound lower for some of the combined cities, but it's really difficult given our lack of funding. So we're lucky, we're one of the few cities, in the Bay Area that have a stormwater fee, but when that stormwater fee was developed, it really focused on gray infrastructure, upsizing and maintenance. We do have some funding for stormwater compliance, some equipment, materials, but we're not able to have very much for green infrastructure. It only uh, allocates 375,000 per year for construction, and we don't have any funding for maintenance. We also don't have any funding from our general funds. So if any of you work for a government agency, you all know about the art of pivoting and always having to switch plans. So I just wanted to give 3 examples of the need of how we've had to pivot along the way. One is that, as I mentioned, we have a funding need. So we put together a pretty elaborate package where we um, tried to make a case for funding for GSI maintenance, and it almost got approved, went up through all the levels of approval, and then got denied at the end. So now we're thinking, okay, well, what can we do to try to get funding for maintenance? One thing is trying to get approval for maintenance from the Stormwater Enterprise Fund for those that are in our right of way, and then trying to get funding from all the different departments that have responsibility for green infrastructure, green stormwater infrastructure on their properties or facilities, and try to get that into a fund that could then help fund maintenance. So we're trying to do this to fund a contractor. We don't have any city staff that are available to maintain this, but we have that, that kind of the long-term view of trying to train staff and take over that maintenance after a while, if we can get over in parallel, build some support from upper management. Also, we don't have any knowledge in-house. We've had the contractor we have been working with works with really kind of, they're like mow and blow kind of landscapers and don't have appropriate knowledge about how to maintain green stormwater infrastructure. So we haven't been able to bring funding in for training. So what we were able to do was bring in a grant from the Environmental Protection Agency, in which we also wrote in some funding from training for some of our local partners, a local workforce development organization, a local volunteer restoration organization, and also our city staff. So we were able to bring in the National Green Infrastructure Certification Program training. It's another discussion whether that's the best fit and whether that's the best fit for workforce development. But we were able to bring in this training and at least be able to fund it externally, and trying to get people's eyes to open up. So people from engineering, people from utilities, from parks maintenance, and others came and were able to learn from a third party, not from our group, how important GSI maintenance is. And I thought that was really successful. And lastly, we really lack a lot of internal standardization. Every time one of our capital improvement projects is built, in the past, it's been designed differently. Therefore, maintenance has to happen differently. Staff and or contractors have to learn the different designs. Everyone knows the issues with these type of things. So we started by having just conversations and meetings, trying to get maintenance staff at the same table with project engineers, and it somewhat worked, and it did help getting, there's an improvement of, for example, getting the design plans out to all the appropriate people to review ahead of time, which wasn't happening before, but it wasn't enough. We were still seeing a lot of things kind of fall through the cracks. So we've developed GSI design specifications. We've developed an O&M manual that both city staff and contractors can go to. We're working on setting up standards for when a city project gets designed. They have to follow a lot of different standards and submit a lot of different information that can go into an asset management software that we're trying to develop in parallel. And that way, we all are familiar with what's expected, both from the design side to the maintenance side. We're developing a SharePoint page with all these resources, and then we can tell everyone, go to this page, get all the information you need, and everyone is looking at the same thing. And finally, we're developing a GSI work group that everyone can join, and people are coming with the focus of talking about this topic because we've been asked to attend other meetings, and then we get this short amount on the agenda, and we don't really we're not able to dig deep and really solve our problems. So those are some examples of how we were trying to pivot without adequate political will, without adequate funding. We're very much in the development stage and pivoting every day. So if you'd like to talk or want to reach out, thank you so much for letting me talk. And I'm going to pass it off to Jessica, who works for Seattle and where they have a very much established program, and I'm eager to learn more. Thank you.
So I'm Jessica Engel. I work with King County Stormwater Services section. So we are the county that the city of Seattle is housed in. And I manage Rainscapes, which is a GSI incentive program for private property owners that are in our unincorporated King County areas. This is a voluntary program that is aimed to retrofit private properties that were built before our stormwater controls were a requirement of new development. So we have a lot of them, and unincorporated King County is pretty expansive. We have urban, rural, we have a lot of suburban, lots of open space, agricultural land. So we have a very diverse audience for this program. So when we were tasked by our county council members to decide if this is a program that we could get a lot of interest in, we decided to take a step back from just jumping into developing this program and use a social marketing approach to go out to our intended audience and really get an understanding of what would be the barriers to participation, what would incentivize people to participate, and how we should actually lay out the program. So there are lots of GSI incentive programs within the Pacific Northwest as well as across the nation, as Nicole highlighted so well today. And we had a lot of our upper management want us to really take the same approach that a lot of our Pacific Northwest neighbors were doing, but we wanted to really ensure that we were understanding our audience, how they would want the program laid out. We have a lot of rebate style incentive programs here, and we see differences in where they're successful. In some of our more affluent areas, they're pretty successful, but we wanted to really ensure that we were building a program that was well suited for our intended unincorporated King County property owners. So we did a multi-language social marketing approach, and we wanted to get people from all of our different sub areas of urban, suburban, and rural. And some of the feedback that we heard is laid out here. Not many people were interested in a rebate style program. They were much more interested in a cost share. We also heard that people would be interested in having outreach done by our King Conservation District instead of us. People are a little bit more comfortable talking to a non-government agency versus us. And I'm sure if you work for a government agency, you understand that. And people wanted King County to hire the contractors and handle permitting, which is unlike some of our neighbors that have a rebate program where the property owner is tasked with doing all of the hiring of a contractor and then they get a rebate check in the mail. So people found that to be a pretty big barrier. If you've ever had work done in your home with a contractor, I'm sure you fully understand that. And then maintenance was a barrier that we heard was a pretty significant one. People are intimidated by how to maintain something like a rain garden or a cistern if they're not familiar with it. If they already have an overwhelming yard and don't do a lot of gardening, people are just hesitant to take on something that they don't really understand, as well as the long-term costs of the maintenance. We also heard from people that they were interested to support the program if it meant that we were hiring veteran crews or people who are looking to break into the green job market. And then people are overwhelmingly concerned about the developmental impacts within their neighborhood. So they see lots of houses going up. They feel that that's impacting the watershed and how rain is falling in their area. So they would want to participate because of that reason. So we decided to build in maintenance as part of our program. So we hire contractors to do the work. We handle all of the engineering design. Because it's a voluntary program that's a retrofit, we align with our surface water design manual as closely as we can, but sometimes we have a little bit of wiggle room there. And then we hire the contractors to help us from the very beginning when we're talking with the property owner about how they are already maintaining their site, what their issues are on their site. And then we get a really good understanding of, are they already gardeners? Are they comfortable with maintenance? And so we're building them something that we know they can handle long term. And then for the first year after installation, we go out and we do training maintenance with our contractor and the property owner. So they get about 4 visits a year, the different seasons where they're getting taught how to maintain their feature. So we offer cisterns, rain gardens. We also do tree planting, and we also do deep paving, but we have an overwhelming interest in cisterns and rain gardens. So we get out there, train our property owners, knowing that after that first year of maintenance training, they will be taking it over. And then we continue to assist them after that first year with technical assistance. Some people also opt to hire a contractor to continue the maintenance long term. And we have found that that has definitely increased people's willingness to participate. They are given a little bit of a peace of mind that we're holding their hand throughout the process. It's not just we're building this and then we're walking away from it. We also maintain a database. We use Salesforce, so we're tracking everything and we're able to automate emails to our property owners, reminding them this is the time of year you should be cleaning leaves out of your gutters. This is the time of year you should be going in and checking on your plants and doing some weeding. So that's also helping us with automating the maintenance process. And this is something that we hear from people just about some of the additional co-benefits of the program. So obviously we're helping provide water quality and flow control retrofits on private property so that we're improving the watersheds at large. We're also providing a lot of cost savings to our property owners. They're seeing the value go up in their homes, and we're helping provide a lot of water savings. We have a lot of people on well, so they're concerned about the access to their well water, and they would like to be able to reuse their roof water for water capture. We also have a lot of people who are finding that they are in fire zone areas, and so they're using some of the cistern water for fire suppression as well as groundwater recharge. We are trying to attack some urban heat islands with our tree planting and additional green space with rain gardens, and then obviously potable water savings as well. And one of the big things that we heard that we're also incorporating into our maintenance component is that green jobs are really a huge benefit for people actually participating in the program. As I said, we were told that if we had a veteran crew or a green job market component, that people would be even more interested in participating. So we have been using all of our installations as trainings for people who are breaking into the green job market. This year we had 30 people trained on our installations with about a 95% success rate in job placement after their training was done. And so we're trying to continue that, and we're seeing that has also been huge for the maintenance component. A lot of people that are trained with us end up starting their own contracting business where maintenance is their first step in the door to their GSI business, because there's no shortage of maintenance requirements and needs across our region. So we're seeing that as a really great foot in the door for people who are breaking into the market. So we usually start people on a maintenance schedule and then they build their way up to installation, and then we help with actual design review, and it goes from there. So maintenance has been a really amazing component to getting people started in the green job market. And so that is a very, very short and condensed look at the program, but I'm always happy to connect in the future. And if you have any additional questions, here is my contact information.